as always, we're keeping Soapy Pre-Up out of the studio. He doesn't have the guts to come back anyways. We're not too worried about it. But my guest this week, a man I've been a big fan of for many, many years, Chase Del Monte, welcome.
Dan, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. And, well, let's get to know you a little bit. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I'm actually from the Jersey Shore, Asbury Park, home of Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi. So I grew up there, kind of normal upper middle class life. I lived like a mile off the beach, so that was nice. Went to school at Villanova outside of Philadelphia, and then after I graduated, I knew I was heading up here to become a professional wrestler under Killer Kowalski.
Oh, awesome. And Asbury Park, that's also Bam Bam Bigelow, right?
Actually, true.
My brother got married like right, I don't know, down the street. It was on the beach. So I forget the name of the town now.
There's somebody down there. Asbury Park, Belmar, Point Pleasant.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up, but he just got married in July, right on the beach. I saw the signs. Huh?
Long Branch?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's like a town over me.
This hotel was like ridiculous.
Yeah, probably the Hilton there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had the Indian ceremony and the American ceremony. It was crazy, but beautiful area. Now we know you're a professional wrestler. We know you own the Wrestling Academy. We know you own Chaotic Wrestling.
I'm a very busy man.
What's 3 things everybody should know about you outside of that?
Wow. I'm a huge fan of Third Eye Blind, the 90s rock band.
Me too.
I've seen them probably over 60 times. I actually recently just met them at my last show, so that was awesome. I'm also a huge ketchup fanatic.
Okay.
I put it basically on everything. I usually always have giant bottles either at home and at the wrestling school just in case. And the third one, I'm really not that all that interesting, I guess. I do like to drive extremely fast, and that's gotten me in a lot of trouble. But that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head.
Awesome. I do love Third Eye Blind, too. So you got to meet Tom Jenkins?
It's Stephen Jenkins.
Oh, sorry. Wow.
Watch your tongue.
Justin, we'll edit that out. We're going to work on that? No, but
please.
Yeah.
Stephen Jenkins was the only one I didn't get to meet.
Okay.
It was the bassist, the guitarist, and the keyboardist, and some of their like road crew and stuff after the show. But supposedly they said that the next time they're in town, they're going to give me tickets, and I am going to get to meet Stephen Jenkins, and that's like a over like 20-year goal right there. So I'm pretty excited.
I remember their first video came out in like 97. Semi-Charmed Life.
There we go.
But yeah, great band. Big fan of theirs. Now, sticking with the theme of the show, which I think we're going to put on a shirt, Justin. Just on the back, maybe sticking with the theme, but which is Let Freedom Ring. What does it mean to you to be an American?
I guess the one thing it means to me is having the freedom to own a wrestling school, own my own wrestling promotion, and do everything that I'd like to do without much interference from other people.
Okay. All right, good answer. We get a lot of different answers on that. It means so much. It means a lot of different things to different people.
Yeah,
You know.
I'm not a very political person, but then that's what I usually say. I was like, as long as it's not affecting professional wrestling and my ability to do so, then I don't really care about the issues.
All right, awesome. We're going to talk a lot about professional wrestling because there really is 3 phases to you: the wrestling career, the owner of the promotion, and the wrestling school. So we'll get right into it. What made you decide that you wanted to be a wrestler?
So I was probably still like a sophomore or junior, in college. My sister's best friend had passed away from a brain tumor, and one of the things she kind of like wrote in an essay that we like got to read afterwards was for all of her friends to like follow their dream. So that summer I lost like 50 pounds, started getting myself in shape, and after that, and kind of just like looking at things and my plans after college and not really having everything, my best friend was a year ahead of me and already moved to Boston junior year. So he was looking for another roommate in Boston. It was very close to Malden. I was living in Somerville at the time, so like it was pretty close. So that I just kind of had those 2 connected pieces, and then it just became like, well, after I get my diploma, if I don't have any plans, like, what better time to jump into a professional wrestling career? And that was 18 years ago, and still haven't stopped.
Awesome. I was actually born in Malden, where the wrestling school is, or was, I should say. Technically, is that the New England? 'Cause I've always got confused by that. Is that technically the New England Pro Wrestling Academy?
So we trace our lineage back through to Killer Kowalski's school. So actually, when I first I came up in August of 2003 to kind of like look at my buddy's apartment. We had to like sign leases and all that stuff, and to take a look at the wrestling school. At that time, I went over to Killer Kowalski's like to get like paperwork and stuff, and it was in the time when he was transitioning to moving his school to the Chaotic Training Center. There was like a kind of a tumultuous beginning between Chaotic Wrestling and Kowalski's, where they were supposed to kind of start in business together, and then some people had like supposedly smartened Walter up about Jamie, the former owner. So then there was like a word falling out, but Mike Hollow, who was training at Kowalski's, still went ahead and started training at the Chaotic Training Center. And then shortly thereafter, without a real head trainer to run it, then Walter moved his school up to the Chaotic Training Center, which then eventually became the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, which it still holds to this day.
Okay, so that makes, because I was always a little confused. So they're kind of a merger at some point.
So that was in like August of 2003. By September, I think my first class was September 15th, 2003. And by that time, Killer had moved his school completely up there. So then Walter was there every Saturday training. Obviously he wasn't actively training that much in the ring, mostly just shouting at us, teaching us a couple different things every now and again, definitely telling us stories of the olden days. I mean, it was awesome to learn under him, for the time that he was up there. Obviously it was in limited capacity for being later in age, but it was a once in a lifetime experience for sure.
Amazing. Pretty intimidating guy, or
yeah, dude was still enormous, and just had such an imposing like presence about him. I mean, he could still command a room. There was always these little like go-tos and stuff that Kowalski hated. So like you can't do a drop down in front of Kowalski. Like he would go absolutely nuts. So like we would all like somewhat dust and know those kind of things after a while not to do them. But like newer people, they would always make the mistake, and then you just hear from the back of the room, "Fake, fake!" And then he would get up and start screaming, "Drop a knee!" And then all class would stop, and everyone especially the newer people, just get these like wide eyes as he was talking, because other times he's so quiet and just kind of keeps to himself. But when he saw something he didn't like, he sure let us know. That's for sure.
That's awesome. That's a good story there. Where was what was your first match like? Where was it? What was it like?
So my first match was in Lowell, Massachusetts at the PAV.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I miss that place. I really do.
Everybody misses that place.
Yeah.
That was an incredible hall for wrestling. But yeah, my first match was actually for the promotion that was running the PAV before Chaotic was.
Okay.
And they had a much lower budget and low key setup. It was basically the remnants of like a backyard company where actually the Logans got their start. That's where I think that might have been coming later, but that's where me and the Logans first kind of like met each other. And they started kind of coming to the CTC. So then our guys started kind of using their promotion as a place to get started. So one of my really good buddies at the time, the Mighty Minnie, former New England veteran, he wanted to have my first match with me and stuff. So I mean, we had this match planned out for weeks, and stuff, and going over it in detail and stuff. And I mean, we probably went like 12 to 15, maybe even longer.
In your first match?
In my first match.
Oh, wow.
And we had, I mean, every single stroke was, talked about and kind of pre-planned. And that's normal for, getting started. But it was definitely a lot more match. I remember showing it to my trainer, Duke Dalton, at the time. And at the end, he just goes, "That was a lot."
Yeah.
And we pulled everything off, and it looked good, but there was just obviously a lack of story or anything. It really was just move salad. But I still remember it, pretty vividly. I used to have VHS, but it's since lost
it's tough
the
to
tape.
keep those.
Yeah.
With the fan, because that place, I remember it just being packed, and you're just packed into it. How did the fans kind of react to it, or did they know who you guys were going into it?
It was a much smaller audience, for that show. Oddly enough, I think, it was there. By the time I actually did, I made my debut, my real debut, in a Battle Royal at Cold Fury 3. I was just in a Battle Royal and dumped over the top pretty quickly, and that was in the PAV as well.
Oh, wow.
And that was a much different feel, just coming out. It was much different than that AWE was the name of the promotion. It was much smaller, so there was only maybe 20 to 50 people there, and it was kind of spread out. And it was mostly like friends and family, so they would react, but it wasn't really like the same kind of like indie crowd that you'd expect from a show at like Chaotic.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Good, that's awesome. What was your favorite time in your career? Now, because you said you started in 2003, so
yes, so
18 years.
Yes. Wow. That's a good one. It's
because you've had a lot of big moments.
I mean, relatively, I guess. I guess I have had a lot of like different like phases and stuff. So there's been different times. My original kind of like babyface run in Chaotic. Then there was like the big heel turn with the Logans. Chester Fernicola was in the middle of there. Then another kind of babyface. I'd have to say my favorite was, though, my heel run as champion with the Logans when, we formed the Mill City Hooligans. We had turned on, Sherman and everything, and that kind of run. At the same time, that's when JT Dunn had entered the company. We had a nice, really long, like year-long story that we played out in like a cage match in December that then eventually like played out an arc that led to Ilya going over and just everything that kind of came out of there. And that was the same time as I was transitioning into more of a role backstage and stuff too. So really had more kind of say, in what we were doing. But, being able to do that of story, with my two best friends next to me, them being the tag team champs, being the heavyweight, heel champion, that was a real blast. Definitely a highlight for sure.
That was a fun time, and you guys really were like the best heels in the company at that point.
Well, thank you.
I remember I'll show you a neck injury, and you put the chair into Sherman's neck.
That's right.
Where was Scotty Slade at the time? I don't.
People still asking. Who knows? That's a very a good example of their friendship.
Yeah. Well, we've had Scotty on the show, but they were a very entertaining act. I would say the top babyface at one point.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I mean, Sherman, if nothing else, is a character. He's an entertainer for sure, and just his energy, it's infectious. Sometimes it can be a little much.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to turn it down. But again, he really did capture the heart of the audience. And they were super over. At that period of time, Team Friendship was pretty much the tops.
Yeah, I still love that Sherman with a U, and don't you, that I don't know who helped. I don't know if people helped him with that, but that was awesome.
I certainly won't take credit for anything that Sherman's done.
Yeah. Who are some of your favorite opponents?
Eddie Edwards for sure is up there. Eric's a great hand. It's, indicative of how much time he spent in Impact. I think they really appreciate his talents there, and he really is a hell of a hand. Matt Logan, I think, definitely up there. We've tussled just as much as we've probably tagged over the years. Matt is kind of one of those wrestlers that, all he does, don't get me wrong, he doesn't not stand out on his own. Getting to wrestle with him and just, being in there with him, I think you have a real different appreciation, for his level of talent. And I guess the third one would have to be, people probably know him mostly as Ivar. He'll always be Handsome Johnny to me. But Handsome is one of the most, just like, the best guy you can have across the ring from you. He's just can effortlessly have, great matches. The guy is just like built to wrestle, and like I've watched him, before like shows, if the ring truck was late, literally wrestle like, kids on our ring crew for a half an hour with no ring, like just ridiculously, like just for our entertainment, because all he wants to do is wrestle. He is phenomenal. And
he really, because you look back, and I wasn't watching when he was Handsome Johnny, but man, when he became, because I came in, he was the brand new bad, and I go, oh yeah, I was like, that guy, he does that character well, and I think he had Sean Gorman, obviously his mouthpiece, but yeah, those are all great opponents. I did say, and I think you've been on Leo's show, and I said the match you did with Adam Booker and the Lil PAD ladder match. It was the first time I'd seen like a ladder match locally that I was like, man, that could hang with ladder matches in WWE.
Thank you. Yeah. And I got to throw Adam on that list. He'll kick my ass if I don't. But Adam is a great opponent as well, and that match, we both to this day are very, very proud of. We've heard a lot of praise over the years. It's one of those matches that I think just kind of stands out. If like it's an indicative kind of like chaotic match, it's that like if you have to kind of point to one of those highlights, it's definitely that. By the end, I think the fan response that we've always kind of seen and heard is like, again, it's still like fans that come to every single show and have for years, like that will be the one that kind of stands out, and that's feels good to hear that.
Great match. Is that available anywhere? I haven't.
I found it recently. We have to
Yeah.
get it cut and released.
Okay.
We've had a bunch of different things that we're waiting for, but that is one of like the ones from the vault. We just released over COVID the one with Jack and I that I know a couple people had been screaming for because it was a bloody war.
Yeah.
So the Chaotic Archives, after I bought the company, I found out were not very very archival. They're very all over the road, and finding things can be very difficult.
I can imagine because I know when Jamie was the owner, like he would do the DVDs, and I don't know what he was taking that from or.
Yeah, I love Jamie to death, and you know I'll defend him to death too. But I get to make fun of him because I got to work with him for so long.
Yeah.
But again, the system was just kind of, their perspective on releasing footage was absurd and bizarre. We had all this footage of so many people with all these stars, and they just like warehoused all the footage and only let like some like DVDs around big shows come out. And they were so anti-YouTube when it first came out because they wanted to like, drive content and be able to like monetize it like differently. But they never let anything out. So like it was only like, it was like the New England's best kept secret. We have this great wrestling company, but unless you're in this area, nobody really knows about it. So that's been one of the big focuses, back when I first took over the company, is trying to get more of that. It's why we went with Twitch and different things, and just trying to put our product into people's hands because, I stand by it and support it. And I think, anybody who really loves story-driven wrestling, you watch Chaotic Wrestling and, I'd put my product up against anybody's.
That's one of the best things about Chaotic in the area is that they have the storylines. And do you feel like you are, getting a following through Twitch, not from New England people, but like over the country?
Our numbers continue to grow, and we do see like a lot of people tuning in from different places on Twitch and signing in. So I think it is. Like anything, it's a slow roll. We've tried a lot of different things. Obviously, there's, anybody can have a Twitch channel. So, there's millions of different channels that are out there and so many different options. Just look at, just independent wrestling alone and not even AEW and like WWE and all the hours of programming they put out. So it's really like, an inundation of like trying to get your product to stand out. But, I think that's what Chaotic kind of relies on. We're not going to be that kind of like, GIF kind of company where it's throwing out all these kind of wacky different moves and huge high spots. It's going to be you kind of have to buy in and kind of like again start to watch the product and not just a match or a clip here. It's really kind of watching whole episodes at a time, watching stories unfold. Again, obviously I'm a biased, my opinion's super biased, but I think, the payoffs are always bigger there. Davian, is a great example of that, who just, won the big one and captured the heavyweight championship at, our big Summer Chaos show. Like, that, again, was such an emotional moment.
It was a great build. It was a great build. They were tag team champions together, and it's
in talking about them and talking to them when we were building some of like the promo segments and stuff, like and it's again another kind of thing that sets Chaotic aside is like when JT and Davey sit down to talk about it and we're filming that promo, like they're literally talking about things that happened, like like they were a tag team. JT did turn on her, like there all of those things. Obviously it exists in kayfabe, but like they happened. Like we portrayed that, like it's an actual story. So we're not talking about hypotheticals and kind of having to like build upon farcical material. Like again, the storyline is laid out there. It all kind of crescendos to itself. We're just kind of picking out the highlights and having that more emotional response to it.
Yeah, no, I really like it, and I gotta say, I gotta give you guys a lot of credit, and you as an owner, because it does take some guts. I know you guys have made the Panoptic title, which I think some people love it, some people don't get it.
Yep.
And then to make a woman world champion, okay, yeah, Impact did it, okay, but it takes guts to do something like that. So I do really respect that.
Appreciate it.
And Davian can kick a lot of people's asses. So
anybody who questions Davian as heavyweight champion is welcome to come to a Chaotic show. And check them out for themselves. She is legit. She's earned it. And while it does, it is somewhat satisfying to hear compliments and see the kind of things happening for women, and changing the business and kind of helping improve that overall image and perspective. It was also the real reason to do it is because of the story was there. Davey, you know, again, Davey is a legit, you know, worker and deserves that kind of attention. It wasn't done because she's a woman. It was kind of irregardless that she is a woman. You know, this was a story of two phenomenal wrestlers.
Very over tag team.
You know, exactly. Two wrestlers who started as a tag team that then divided. You know, the story that kind of unfolded, and you know, the title held in the balance of two former partners now like forced to go to war. And again, I think it's just a natural story that resonates. You know, again, gender becomes somewhat irrelevant to it. It's just finding the right person for that role, and Deanne is hands down the person for that.
No, I really like that, and I think she definitely earned it. I think she's been a chaotic staple probably since I've been watching.
Hell yeah.
So, now you kind of talked about a little bit. How did you meet the Logans? So were you saying they were backyard guys?
They were.
And they're both like great amateur wrestlers.
False.
Don't they help out with Doughboys?
So Nick Logan, the often neglected third Logan, Nick, he is an amateur wrestler. He wrestled through college, and he does coach at Doughboy.
Okay.
I believe he's the head coach of Lowell High School now. But the other two, Matt and Brian, were not amateur wrestlers.
Okay.
They were backyarders.
Okay.
That started in the backyard, just kind of having their own little things in Lowell. Then they kind of got attached to this group that eventually ran AWE, and actually were renting space or the ring down at Walters for a while. But the Logans rather had natural talent, charisma. I mean, obviously the brother gimmick and everything was perfect for them. And even in the backyard, they stood out above everybody else. And you could kind of it's one of those which one of these ones isn't like the other.
Yeah.
Like they kind of stood above the rest of them. And once some of them Logan's gotten a couple of shows with guys like the Mighty Mini and Andre Lyons, again former wrestlers back in the day, they started to tell them you guys should come to the Chaotic Training Center. This would help you by leaps and bounds. You guys are already pretty good. Imagine yourselves with real training. So then they did start coming to the CC, and that's where we first met. And then we started having shows kind of together again. We were all kind of coming up at that same time, training 3 to 4 days a week, and just kind of fell in thick as thieves.
That's awesome. And then you guys just became
and then it just again I lived in Somerville for a year when I first moved up here, because I had agreed before I kind of got into the CTC, and then with the CTC being in North Andover, I was spending so much more time up here in the Merrimack Valley that it just really didn't make sense for me to still live in Boston and be commuting. I wanted to be closer to where I was spending most of my time, so I moved to Lowell. I knew that the Logans were there, but that that was really before we became friends. Then once I lived kind of in the city, and we were again going to shows a lot more, just kind of on the same times, we just started kind of traveling together because it made more sense for us to leave together because we were on most shows together. And the rest, I guess, as they say, is kind of history. We just kind of fell in together, and it's crazy. We've kind of just constantly kind of had each other's backs throughout our careers. I happily and admittedly rode their coattails for many years and hop in the car when they would get bigger bookings and just kind of be there bag in hand if needed, and got a lot of myself my own bookings that way. I don't mind being a third Logan if I have to.
Do you think we'll ever see them back, or are they kind of?
What would they retire from? Are they just going to stop kicking ass?
Yeah,
They're the Logan brothers, Mill City Hooligans for life. Never say never.
Well, big shout out to I always thought they helped out there because I used to coach wrestling for a long time, and I remember I posted something about the Logans, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Doughboys Wrestling," and one of the parents, and I go, "Oh yeah," so I just assumed that they helped there, but so their brothers. Nick is the top wrestler.
I mean, Matt and Brian are known to there for other different things, but it's really Nick who is really running things.
And if he's coaching Lowell High, he's got. I mean, they've always had a great wrestling program.
Absolutely.
All right. So again, owner of Chaotic, the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. How did you become the owner of these companies, or the two different places?
I'd like to say it's all part of my little master plan. Getting involved more in the back end of Chaotic was around the end of 2015. I think my first show really helped me out. It happened to be the first show the show I hurt my neck seriously. So kind of around that same time, it was just starting to kind of look further down the line of like, I knew I was never going to be, I wasn't even actively pursuing WWE or anything like that. But I always did want to be involved in wrestling in some sort of capacity. So it was trying to look and see kind of like where that would be. Jamie Janikowski, the former owner of Tech, we've always been close friends throughout the years. So in just talking to him, I kind of saw some writing on the wall that, he was looking for things. And he had always, just mentioned to me almost sometimes in passing that, one of the biggest, the best things about Chaotic back in the day was that you had the CTC and you had Chaotic Wrestling tethered together. So you had a school fueling the promotion.
Which is so awesome.
And, and although the New England Pro Wrestling Academy under Brian Fury had still had, almost direct connections to Chaotic, it was a little separation of like, church and state because it was Fury's wrestling school, completely independent. And then Chaotic Wrestling was existing. Chaotic, still obviously used Brian and all of his students, still were, basically tethered to this promotion, but it just wasn't the same direct connection. So as I got more involved, I wanted to start kind of like tying the two together. And if, again, I was going to be kind of, in whatever I was going to be with Chaotic Wrestling, I wanted to kind of start tethering it. So, I just kind of started coming around the school more. It was something I wanted to do. So I ended up buying a ring for Chaotic so we could put our better, show ring in the school because our older Chaotic rings that we had been, for the, whatever it was, 15, 16 years that we used them were just much stiffer bumps. They were just much harder. Like, and if I was going to come and train and actively bump in those rings, like I probably wouldn't be walking here today. So, then we moved one of the Chaotic show rings into the school and we're using my ring for Chaotic shows. So it kind of then put my hands in both pots and kind of connected the two because now Chaotic was using my ring and now a Chaotic Wrestling ring was in the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. So now they did have that tether. Like if it did split, well, one of the rings would have to come with it. And it just kind of created, a little bit of a web. And then it just, again, everything else kind of just fell in place, over the time I started helping just more and more with Chaotic. And as Jamie then did kind of like, want to, start to look beyond, it was more of just like a natural fit. Like he just kind of sat, I think, he was the one who kind of asked me, like, would you be interested in buying? It's like, yes, of course, that's what I've been doing. And then the school was a little bit more, just kind of fell into my lap during COVID. Brian Fury wanted to get out of, professional wrestling in about April after COVID. Came to me and kind of told me that he was going to be, looking to get out. So we made the arrangements kind of there. And, again, I wasn't going to let the school close. So quickly jumped in and, we started working on what became the new New England Pro Wrestling Academy.
Awesome. And it looks like you guys have made a lot of different changes. I've seen like the weight room pictures and stuff like that. Because I've been there, I think, once for one of the fantasy camp, well into my 30s. But I was like, all right, I remember when I was a kid, or when I was growing up, Lobster Man had a school, but it was definitely gone way before. But no, great facility, awesome facility. What is your favorite part of being a trainer?
Probably like seeing the kids succeed, watching something click for them. Shannon Levangie, who's just recently been wrestling on our shows, is one of our students. She started in January, and just really watching them kind of grow and, grow up in front of your eyes, basically, like in the ring, and seeing kind of like the potential that sometimes these kids like can barely see in themselves, like start to like blossom in the ring and watch them come out of their shells, and do things when someone who's probably like would walk in the first day and would be scared to make like a peep in the ring, and then watching that person, pull off these high spots and then, show all this kind of character and, yell and scream in the ring, pulling that out of them and seeing that happen is a very like satisfying experience. It was one of the things, once we first started getting rolling with Reloaded and different shows and watching that kind of happen, it gave me the same kind of satisfaction that I can get, from being in a wrestling ring and performing, was getting that different but similar kind of feeling, out of that, and it, kind of reinforced like, I am doing the right thing.
And obviously, do some people just progress faster? Because you might have someone that's just this natural athlete, picks it up no problem. They could be in there whenever. You might have others that just take longer?
Everyone develops on their own path. You
Yeah.
know, I always tell people, when they come in and look for a tour, that it's going to take everyone, at least usually 4 to 6 months. There's a time period where you just have to learn the basics, and that is either can be increased or decreased really based on how often they're coming, and just a whole list of other intangibles as well. Some people just pick things up, at a different rate. A lot of people walk in the door and maybe they have that character side, like showing a personality and stuff like that comes easy to them. They can't, they got 2 left feet and can barely walk in the ring, let alone run the ropes.
Yeah.
But again, when it comes to showing character and stuff, they can more than make up for it. So it's going to be harder to do, the mechanics and the kind of like athleticism of the ring, but the theatrics they get. We get a lot of kids that are the opposite. We got a lot of natural athletes here that, can do, tons of flips and different kind of acrobatic maneuvers, but you put a microphone in front of their face or just want them to show the least bit of like fire in the ring, and they just kind of shut down and get that deer in the headlights look. And then, again, you get kind of every mixture kind of in there in between. It's really just kind of on a spectrum that everyone does really like learn things, differently and at different rates. One of my favorite stories to tell, and I tell it as often as I can, is that Tommaso Ciampa took over a year and a half before he could take a proper hip toss or flip bump. Yes. So I always use that as encouragement to like tell people like, he ended up doing pretty well. So if it took him that long to learn something that's pretty elementary, again, and he already he had character, he had life, he had all these different things, and he was athletic too, but this kind of piece took him just longer to kind of adapt to. And then, once he did, he blew by that, and everything else, is kind of history, as they say. But again, that's just how kind of it goes sometimes. A lot of times people will hit the ground running on a lot of things, and then they'll hit that one thing that kind of can stop them, and that can either be frustrating and sometimes we don't see them again, or, they stick with it and push through, and that's when you'll see them start debuting on Chaotic.
Have you seen anybody in this, I don't want to, because I know we're hitting a lot here, but has anybody ever come in, because I remember when I went to the New England Pro Wrestling Academy for that one day, someone asked about, I want to be a manager, I don't want to be a wrestler. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had anybody come in that you're like, you have the character, but you can't wrestle, I could use you as a mouthpiece or something like that?
That is, we see it actually more the opposite usually. People do come in and want to be managers. Our kind of policy and our tuition is the same, and we usually start them in the same kind of training as all of our newer students. There's the cardiovascular elements just to kind of put them through. But there's, something to be said for that kind of shared experience of kind of, going through that and having that same kind of experience as one of the wrestlers. Because if you've kind of taken the same different bumps with them, now when you kind of step back and you're only doing that, it gives you different, just kind of a feel for what the wrestlers kind of go through. So it gives a better layer of perspective. But there does come, a time where in different students over different times, where you do want to at least give them that kind of, I guess heads up, you know. And just it's more of an assessment of their skills. We've had different people go to rep managers or referees, and again, I think generally they already see it and they know. It's very rare that you get somebody who's completely blown away by this conversation about them. It's like, oh, you don't see that I'm killing it. It's like, no, you're close to killing yourself. But so usually having that conversation, I think, helps people kind of just yeah, that's probably better. Again, one of the things I always tell prospective students is that, wrestling and, at a wrestling school, it's an island of misfit toys. All of us had the same experience of, probably being high school wrestling fans, wearing wrestling shirts, to school and kind of being made fun of and bullied for it. And it's so everybody down in that training room has that same experience. We all were that kind of person, whether you were the jock on, high school or, the band geek, it doesn't really matter. Everyone kind of has that kind of oh, you're a wrestling fan kind of story to them. So it helps create that kind of, kind of similar jumping off ground for everyone.
No, I like that. I will say though, when I was in middle school, wrestling was the coolest thing ever. So if you had a wrestling shirt, you were, I think I had a DX shirt, not the one that said "suck it" on it. I had the red one. And they were like, "How'd you get that?" And within a few years, things change. But always be proud to be a wrestling fan because I think it's the best form of entertainment that there is.
Again, I'm biased, but I would certainly agree.
Most challenging part of owning Chaotic?
Wow. So I'd say the most challenging piece to owning Chaotic is, along with owning any business, is like the time spent doing the thing that I, kind of got me into it and that I love the most, which is performing in the ring. I get to do the least now.
Yeah.
And it's everything else that comes with kind of being that, the boss and having to, book the buildings, book the truck, and all those kind of,
imagine.
and everything that kind of comes with it, dealing with all the talent, dealing with production, making sure everything's getting over to, my producers so that we get our shows ready on time for Twitch. Back in the Reloaded time, there was a couple of weeks, we had stocked up, a couple of weeks worth of episodes before we went, and then through timing and different things that just happened, people getting sick, other, holidays and different things, like we just got back into this, like we were week for week. So sometimes like it was Wednesday before I was getting like the first cut so I could watch it before we could go live on Thursday.
Yeah.
So, everything else outside of that is challenging. But, it's also really, really rewarding. It's great to, be taking the company up to what I at least think is like new heights, reaching out to new audiences, just being kind of in the wrestling business in a post-speaking out era, and trying to, change the kind of landscape for, both my students and my wrestlers, kind of goes hand in hand. But I mean, I always tell people like the 36 hours before a show, like, from the moment I wake up on a Thursday till the time I actually get into the building on Friday is the worst, it's the worst period of my life.
Yeah.
Because that's just like when shit goes, that's when things go wrong.
No, we're all right. We're all right. Yeah. No F-bombs. That's okay.
That's just that's when everything goes wrong. Like once I get to the building, like, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Like I'm at the building, like now the show goes on and I just make adjustments on the fly. But like it's just always that Thursday, that's like, the truck broke down. We can't get we couldn't get a truck on Thursday because U-Haul is the worst. So that's just like, again, like trying to get everything there, and then it's like then it's like getting to that building, walking in the doors is like the calm before the storm. It's just like, all right, like,
okay, we're good to go.
Yeah, we're in it. Like I don't know, there's nothing else to do but wrestle now.
Yeah. Do you tell like, and maybe everybody does it different, do you tell the wrestlers what's going to happen when they get there, or do you give them sort of an idea, or is it a little of both?
So it's just a little bit of both. I mean, we get a run sheet out to our locker room, or I do rather, it's usually pretty late on a Thursday night, before the show.
Yeah.
So it's usually waiting for people kind of in the morning. That gives the basic show rundown, that gives, match order, lengths, everyone usually generally already knows who they're wrestling and has some idea, but now it just kind of gives the show more of a format so people can kind of see where they go. But a lot of it is then kind of rediscussed once we get there.
Yeah.
I really like to get the talents, feel for everything. And that really started again with the Reloaded era, kind of doing these things in the small environment, the studio setting that we were doing with a canned audience. I kind of told everybody like, there's obviously only so many matches we can have, and, there's other things kind of going on. So it's not like everybody just gets like, carte blanche to pick and choose who they want to wrestle. But the kind of other things, the bigger kind of pieces that we were doing really did kind of like, I was asking the guys to really have some input, because like, there's no real fans out here. Like, we're just kind of doing this for ourselves. Like, if we're going to come and do this, like, I want to make sure everybody's having fun and involved what they're doing. As just like, if I'm just playing like matchmaker over in the corner, like, you two go wrestle. Like, there's no real enjoyment out of there. I want everyone to kind of have a, like, at least feel for like what's kind of going on with them. So, again, the show has a, basic kind of format. A lot of it doesn't change. Some of it is open as things kind of happen. Again, those Thursday to Friday before it, anything can and will happen.
Awesome. And now I just want to talk briefly about a current or guy on TV on NXT, Carmelo Hayes, Christian Casanova, New England Pro Wrestling Academy trainee. You've had great matches with him.
Pretty hard not to have a great match with him.
He's doing awesome. It's like, how can you not be happy for him? Like, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, it's pretty impossible not to be, just so overjoyed for him. I think he was kind of slept on for a while,
Because, I remember when Anthony Green got signed, he had stuff with Evolve, and I kept saying, man, if they looked at him, he'd be right there too. And
that's all it really took,
you know,
was Christian to be in the right time at the right place and just kind of be seen by the right person. And, that's not an uncommon thing in wrestling. It's just a matter of, having that one match when that one guy seemed to be watching the show, and then you capture his eye, and then you have somebody fighting for you. And, that's really kind of sometimes all it takes. But again, as I said, Christian was long in the waiting. He's had the talent, the charisma and everything. Watching him grow from the Michael Jackson character to the show, he was someone, he admits to this day, was in Framingham going to wrestling shows, watching the Logans, as a fan. And then, to come through the New England Pro Wrestling Academy and just become the true top talent that he was here on the independent level. I think, again, he was someone who I think would turn heads even, at any show that he's at. Anybody would kind of look and be like, that guy's going
that's
somewhere.
What I thought.
He looked like a star. He carried himself like a star. Fake it till you kind of make it thing.
Yeah.
So when he, when the WWE scooped him up, it's unsurprising, to kind of see, because that's all it really ever needed was that kind of opportunity. And he's a guy who's going to, absolutely kill it any chance that he gets. Again, couldn't be happy for the guy.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to see. It's awesome to watch him every week. I just ordered my Carmelo Hayes shirt. Excited to get that.
Don't miss.
One great, and he's a great guy, because I remember I was doing a show about Leo and his 200th episode, and I hit up Christian, said, hey, can you give me a little write-up on Leo? He's like, I can get it to you tomorrow. I go, I actually need an hour. He got it right back to me. So, great guy. Couldn't be more happy for him. And he's, not just that, he's so goddamn entertaining on the show. So, check out, oh, I can't say that, sorry, Justin. I don't make any money off NXT, but let's go into fan questions real quick. First one from Derek Chappis, softball buddy of mine. Where do you see the K1 in the future of Chaotic? I think that's a business term. I don't know what he meant.
I think that's actually, it's one of our students.
Oh, okay.
So I think,
I'm sorry.
I know it's one of the names he uses.
Yeah.
K1.
Has he been on the show and I just missed it?
He was in the countdown.
Okay. Okay.
He does security. You might recognize him if you saw him, but he hasn't really fully made his debut yet.
Okay.
And I guess his future remains to be seen.
It's up to him.
Yeah, it's really up to him right now. He's got some other things going on. I think he's got a ton of potential. He lacks on some of the kind of other pieces that he knows about and needs to work on. His future's own hands right now for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, Tim Sennett, buddy of mine, I've been clamoring for a Mill City Hooligans shirt since 2016. How can I satisfy my consumerist craving?
Come to a show.
Are you selling them again?
We definitely have some. I got at least definitely our green ones, Blood, Sweat, and Beers. I definitely have some of those. We have some original Mill City Hooligans kicking around as well. Tim Sennett, hit me up on Facebook and we'll chat.
Awesome. He became a fan because of when you guys were doing the Chunky shows. Chaotic grew a little bit more in New Hampshire by doing those shows, because what I found, I used to go to shows, I'd never see anybody from Nashua there. All of a sudden I'm going to shows, I'm like, that Nashua guy. So
those are fun shows.
I never got to go because I worked Wednesday nights, but I wish I did, because that's actually interesting to watch.
It was a unique experience. It was a blast.
From Mike Burkholder, are you familiar with that? Okay, so
He's a friend from high school.
Is a cross-faced chicken wing a viable submission maneuver?
It is. I've been on shows with Bob Backlund himself.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So Burkholder, I can tell you from experience, it's definitely a viable hold.
How's Backlund in real life?
He's out of his mind.
Is he really? So there wasn't just like...
No, it's a shoot. He's out of his mind. I mean, with complete respect, it's Bob Backlund. Please, he's a legend. But I mean, he is Mr. Backlund.
Really?
That's what you have to call him. He still does all the squats around the ring and stuff. I mean, he is Mr. Backlund.
It's interesting because when you look back, before I ever knew who Bob Backlund was, right? But he comes in as that, what do they call Buddy Howdy or Duty Howdy? Right? Howdy Doody. And then when he turned in 94, I was like, whoa, this is a little bit more than that.
Bob Backlund was actually on an independent show that was held in my high school.
Oh, really?
It was probably 1999. I think I was a senior in high school. And it was the first independent show I'd seen or even known about, growing up on the Jersey Shore. Like, I mean, I watched WWE and
Yeah.
WCW, grew up as a fan, but I didn't really know about the independents. I didn't know like that level of it. So when a show came, I was like, I was front row, like center and stuff, and Bob Backlund was there, and I had no idea what the card was. So Bob Backlund came out, and my jaw was just on the floor. I was like, what is he doing here? Yeah. And he just stalled the whole time and then put someone in the chicken wing.
Oh my goodness! And I think he's got to be the second longest WWF champion then. No, San Martino, and then he was like 5 years.
It's got to be up there.
Yeah,
those are hard ones to beat, especially these days.
Oh my goodness! From Anthony Miller, Squeaks, big chaotic fan. I mean, he doesn't miss a show.
God bless you, Squeaks.
Most chaotic moment you've seen in chaotic wrestling?
Ooh, most chaotic moment. Well, I'll have a couple. The pandemonium that we had right before COVID, when Josh Briggs came out and like destroyed the
that was
whole show.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was definitely a chaotic moment. To give a little like behind the scenes, some of the things, I won't point fingers or name names, but just didn't go quite according to plan. So the multiple send-outs and Josh coming back was because things got kind of screwed up. So like we had to keep sending him, and Josh just kind of had a feel for like what we were going for. So each time just started kind of ratcheting up the the emotion and everything that happened. So a lot of it was all just kind of like in the moment happening. So watching at the screen, like none of that was like planned out or like kind of expected. So we were just watching on the monitor, like just as kind of like surprised and like in shock as everyone else is like, what's he gonna do next?
Was he like even like what
Yeah, he just kind of was like going on autopilot. Like you're just kind of feeling it out there. It was incredible to kind of see.
Also, shout out to him. He's on NXT now as well.
Absolutely. The second one, I guess, would have to be when I got impaled and stuck to the cage. That was definitely a chaotic moment. Have you never heard of that one?
Which one? When was that?
So at Breaking Point is just probably 2017.
I don't know.
Me and the Logans versus Cam and AG and Verna.
Is this the Fireball?
Yes.
Okay,
the Fireball
I did miss
happened,
this. Yes.
The Fireball happened just before that. So the match, was like War Games style with us entering the cage at different times. Eventually, everyone's kind of cleared out. It's down to me and Verna, and he power bombs me kind of, against the cage wall, and I fall against, people have seen it probably a dozen times. But a piece of jagged cage got like stuck in my arm. And had kind of poked up through the skin, and it's right where like my wrist tape ends.
Oh, geez.
So like I moved to get out under the ropes, and like I could feel I couldn't move. I was stuck to the cage. So I look and I can see the hook, but I thought it had just caught my like tape. So I went to raise my arm up to like the tape over the hook, and I can just see the skin like pulling, and I was like, I'm stuck in the cage. And this is not to be a tough guy. I didn't feel anything. It didn't hurt at all, like at any point, even after I got to the hospital and like they took it out, and like I don't know, it missed all like nerves. But the ref, Rich Bass, comes over to me and he's just like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, well, come here. And he's like, what? And I'm like, no, don't freak out. And he's just like, okay, what's the matter? And I was like, I'm stuck to the cage. And he's like, what do you mean? And I pulled so he could see the skin, and he just goes, oh, and like goes running across the ring. And I'm like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
So then they had to like pull a bunch of people to the back because it wasn't really clearly visible to like a lot of people. It just again kind of looked, like something, you could tell something was a matter, but like couldn't really tell. So then we had to like look for bolt cutters, and they didn't know what to do. Jamie wants us to stop the match. I'm telling them absolutely not. Just free me from the cage.
So you're just kind of waiting, and then everybody else is doing
their
thing?
And I mean, it felt like an eternity. It was probably like 90 seconds.
Oh, okay.
But then I get up, I finally get freed from the cage, I push everybody away and kick Verna in his face, make sure I still win the match.
Yeah.
Had to go out with the W.
Yeah.
But there's some nasty pictures with like because it ended up being kind of like
I have seen this picture. Yes.
With me holding up my forearm, because it ended up being kind of almost like a like one of those like kind of like the outline fish, like the Jesus fish people have on their car. That's kind of how it was, because the hooks kind of came out, and the one that went underneath was kind of like pressing up through my skin, and the one that was outside of it was kind of like pushing over it to like kind of like clamp it on my skin from underneath. So that was definitely one. And the last one would probably be the last man standing match with Dijak. the show before, he had actually he like picked me up in the opening seconds of the matches right after I beat him at Cold Fury. He scoops me up and he runs me into the turnbuckle. And he kind of, I thought he was going to land me a little bit lower, so like my lower back kind of hits the top turnbuckle, and I just like flail over the top. And our posts are rectangular,
Yeah.
but like kind of, the point is straight back from the corner. So as I kind of just fell backwards into the buckle, my head just like hit the point of the pole. Not so much that it hurt. Like it again, like I could feel that I hit something, but it wasn't the impact. Like I was just like, oh, like that's funny. And I brought my head forward, and I could just feel like the warmth, and then see the blood pool, and I was like, oh man. So then the next show, I'm hitting Dijak with a trash can lid, and I had hit him once before, and like the can had just gotten like jagged a piece, like sometimes when it gets crumbled, and I hit him right again, and just with that sharp edge, like opened him up a gash, and it was just flowing down his face. And I didn't even realize till he like rolled outside and was like taking a while. So I look over the top, and it is just the prototypical crimson mass, and I was just like, oh Jesus. And we still did another like 15 minutes, including the last thing, and people have mentioned it before, because Dijak literally like landed in people's laps. He does like a springboard moonsault to the outside, and he kind of gets caught on the guardrail, and his large legs are like now in people's like laps. And we were supposed to be fighting up to the stage for like our finals part of the match, and like Jamie and a bunch of other people come running out and get back in the ring. Like, what the hell? You're like, absolutely not. Just like blocking our way. So we had to roll back in and quickly finish the match off. But I think those would be my three for sure.
Those are definitely chaotic moments. So Anthony, and another thing, Dijak is on Raw. They finally split them up.
I'm not too familiar with the current product, so you'd be telling me news.
I don't even know. The name's, I think, Slapjack.
No, he's T-Bar. I do know that. I know that. I know that.
Yeah, I'm glad that because I think he's a very talented guy, and obviously whatever idea they had, pandemic ideas weren't great. John Forth, the chase that owns the place.
I mean, that's not really a question, but it is a statement of fact.
Give him a shout out there.
Thank you, John.
All right, we'll get into blank versus blank. So I'm going to give you two things, two people. You got to pick one and tell me why.
Okay.
Two guys that were at the height of their eras, really. Well, one you could kind of debate, I guess. I guess you could debate them both. Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin?
Oh, hell yeah. Steve Austin, I always say, like, Shawn Michaels kept me in wrestling. Like, and, I didn't really like, in that like kind of lull period of like the mid 90s, I kind of fell out. I'd follow along kind of by magazines and different kind of things. When Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels really started feuding, that like, really brought me into wrestling. And that's kind of been the feud that really like ignited my love for wrestling. Hulk Hogan, I get it. And I like Hulk Hogan, and I was a Hulkamaniac, I guess, as a kid, but like, never the super like Hulk Hogan fan that like a lot of people were. I was more of an Ultimate Warrior guy when he came along. I don't know. Maybe it's why I prefer to be a bad guy, but like I prefer the bad guys usually.
And Hogan did prove to be a very good bad guy.
He did. That's a fact.
Here's a random one. I just like throw Lex Luger or Buff Bagwell.
Jeez, that's a.
Both were kind of like together at the end of WCW. That's why I kind of throwing that out there.
I'll go with Lex. Just I remember liking Lex as a kid. I liked the torture rack in WCW days. Buff really never did anything but annoy me. I did like his little dance.
I like the American males, so but I would still go Luger. I know you're a Jersey guy. Maybe you won't care about this. More responsible for the success of the New England Patriots, Belichick or Brady, in the 20 years?
Yeah, that doesn't really move my needle much. I'll go with Brady, just because I'm a Stars kind of guy. I like the lead singer of rock bands. The star player. They get all the credit. It comes now from a guy who's being a trainer, but that's the trainers in the back. Put the stars out front.
Yeah, it's been a big debate, and I just hope that the Patriots let Mac Jones throw the ball more and trust the kid. These guys just had a really big match for New England All-Star Wrestling. I guess it was the first time ever. Brian Malonis, the Kingpin, or Die Hard Eddie Edwards?
Oof. I hate them both so much. Obviously kidding. I mean, I don't know what I'm exactly picking them against, but I don't even need to. I'll go with Eddie Edwards, just because we've been friends for a very long time. And while me and Malonis have also been friends for a very long time, we are long-standing rivals.
That's true.
So, our feud goes back to the very
I
very
remember you
first
guys were
days.
teaming up at one of Anthony Green's shows, and
Right,
didn't quite work out.
No, we aren't compatible in the ring. We've learned our different on the outside now. We've seen our differences through, and we're good friends. But just in the ring, we just we don't we don't see eye to eye. Although we do have very good matches together.
Yeah, I do. I always tell. I'm a big fan of Monis. Great guy. I don't know Eddie Edwards at all, but it was kind of cool because that was Ring of Honor versus Impact in a way, in one ring.
Yeah, for me, it's it's more interesting, I think, for just the fact that it's the two of them wrestling for the first time.
Yeah.
Me and actually Danny Miles were talking, a couple shows back that it was, we had really just met, right prior to COVID, and he lives in Billerica, I live in Lowell. We're both local guys who have been wrestling, 15 plus years, and we just never crossed paths. It's just it's so weird
doesn't
that
happen,
you just kind of work for different promotions. He was kind of a big time guy. I was always the chaotic guy, and there just wasn't that much crossover opportunity. And again, it's just something like that. The two of them have been such staples of the area for so long, and have worked so many different shows together, and it's just crazy that again, they just never crossed paths like that.
So glad it happened. I'll do the next couple real quick. Would you rather watch AEW or WWE? Now you're saying you don't watch a lot of the current stuff.
I don't watch most of the current product. When I do, it's AEW. Okay. It's a lot more wrestling.
Yes.
I tend to like the product a lot more. It's a lot faster, I think, and easy to digest. There's just too much WWE. It's oversaturated. And I think, if anything, I'd watch the WWE pay-per-views when they actually get to wrestle more. I think those are a little bit enticing to me. I still watch the big ones and stuff, but I just, the rapid changeover in storylines and stuff just doesn't really draw me in. I think that's another thing that I like more about AEW is they have a longer term storytelling generally, just because of their pay-per-view cycle is quarterly. So it helps again just with the pacing of stories. It's not just kind of burn through this one, burn through this one, burn through this one, because you have to get on to the next one. They have a little bit more kind of arcs to play with.
Yeah, and I enjoy, I do love NXT 2.0, and I thought I was not going to like it because you heard about Vince McMahon coming in and maybe, but that's been great. I do prefer AEW right now. I just think that I've been watching Raw since 1993. It's just gotten kind of boring over the years.
Yeah.
Last one real quick. You got to choose one. Would you rather be the owner of Chaotic or the owner of the New England Pro Wrestling Academy?
Wow. Why you got to do this to me, buddy? I think I'd rather be owner of the school. Yeah. I think I'd rather, if I'd have to hang my hat on one, I think it would be helping, the next generation in training people. I could always still work for Chaotic Wrestling and be one of their wrestlers, and that might actually be more. That's actually more alluring. That's a lot less to do. I don't get out that much anymore for outside shows, but I love picking up a show here and there for the very reason I get so giddy when I would in my first couple of years, because I get to go to a show and I don't have to do anything. I can just sit back, do my 10 minutes or so, do my BS that I do in the ring, get out, get paid, and be done with it. Oof. Just getting happy just thinking about that, not having a week and a half of preparing for the show and making sure everything's kind of there, making sure we got our tickets list, our reserve seats, the truck's there, just the opposite. Now I'm getting stressed just thinking about next Friday's show.
Well, I'm going to try to be in attendance because I haven't been there in a while. But awesome. Chase, I really appreciate coming on. This has been a blast. Love to have you back sometime.
For sure. Let me know.
But everybody out there, again, if you're asked to wear a mask, just wear a mask. We're pushing to say, get vaccinated. Let's all kind of come in this together. And until next time, I hope everybody has a great week, unless your name is Soapy Pre-Op. But until next time, let freedom ring.